I never imagined my life could change in a single afternoon. I came home, expecting the usual quiet, the routine of bills and small talk. But then I found it. The hidden documents that would reveal a betrayal so deep, it shook me to my core. Before I continue, if you've ever felt someone close to you hide the truth, hit subscribe. You won't want to miss how this story unfolds. It all started with what I thought was a simple call from the bank. My husband David and I had been married for 8 years. From the outside, we looked perfect. 2 careers, a house we loved, and a small savings account we managed together. I trusted him with everything, our finances, our home, even the smallest of decisions. I thought we shared everything, including secrets, until that day. David had always been careful with money, more than I ever needed him to be. I never questioned it. I assumed every transaction he made, every document he signed, was for our mutual benefit. He was meticulous, organized, and charming. That charm is what made this betrayal hurt even more. It began with a routine email from the bank. Something about a property account in my name, but I didn't recognize it. My curiosity piqued. I asked him about it casually, expecting a simple answer. "Just some paperwork I handled," he said, brushing it off. But his tone, it didn't match his eyes. There was hesitation, a flicker of something I couldn't place. I didn't press further. Not yet. I trusted him after all. But that night, while he was asleep, I opened my laptop. I logged into the bank account he had supposedly set up for investment purposes. My heart sank. There it was, another bank account, hidden, in his name. But with transfers and deposits I had never authorized. It wasn't just money. It was proof of a life I didn't know he had. The emails led me to something even more shocking. A deed to an apartment, in my name. A secret apartment he had bought without my knowledge. How could someone so close hide something like this? I felt a mix of fear, disbelief, and an odd surge of power. I had the legal right to that property, yet I had never known it existed. That night I couldn't sleep. My mind raced through possibilities, questions, and worst of all, doubts. Was this a simple mistake, a hidden investment, or was it intentional? The next morning I decided I wouldn't confront him yet. I needed to know everything first. And for the first time in years I realized I held a secret he didn't suspect I knew. Over the next few days I quietly began piecing everything together. Every receipt, every bank statement, every email. I followed the trail like a detective. The more I uncovered, the deeper the betrayal cut. David had been living a double life, hiding money and property, all under my name without my knowledge. Every lie he told, every omission weighed on me, but also lit a fire I hadn't felt in years. I confronted him casually one evening, acting calm, careful not to reveal that I knew more than I let on. "So, about that apartment," I said, leaning against the kitchen counter, my voice neutral. "How did it come to be in my name?" David froze for a second, then laughed nervously. "Oh, just some paperwork the lawyer suggested. You know, for tax purposes. Nothing serious." I nodded, masking the storm inside me. Right. For tax purposes. Every word he spoke now sounded hollow, every smile forced. I realized the man I thought I knew had carefully built an entire world without me. And yet, by hiding the deed in my name, he had given me the leverage I needed. That night I sat alone in the living room, staring at the documents again. The apartment was real. The account was real. And the truth was undeniable. I had the power to reclaim everything, not out of spite, but because justice demanded it. I started planning. I didn't need to act rashly or emotionally. Every detail mattered. The timing, the documents, the presentation. If I moved carefully, I could take control without a fight, without alerting him to the fact that I knew the full scope of his betrayal. Days turned into a week, and every encounter with David was a balancing act. I smiled, I laughed, I maintained the facade of ignorance, all while my mind raced with strategies. Each document I reviewed, each account I logged into, strengthened my resolve. It wasn't just about money, it was about trust, integrity, and showing that deception would never triumph. I would reclaim what was mine and expose the truth in a way he could never undo. And then, finally, I discovered the final piece. A series of hidden contracts and transfer agreements, all pointing to a plan David had hoped I'd never uncover. That was the turning point. I now had the full picture, the legal means, and the moral right to act. I leaned back in my chair, letting the tension settle. I had spent years trusting this man completely. He had shattered that trust in the most elaborate way imaginable. But for the first time, I realized I wasn't powerless. I had been given the tools to turn the tables, and I was ready. The next step would require precision, patience, and nerves of steel. Because once I moved, there would be no going back, and the consequences would be undeniable. David didn't yet know that the quiet, compliant wife he had manipulated for years was about to reclaim everything he thought he could keep from me. I spent the next morning reviewing every detail of the apartment deed and the bank account. The weight of betrayal still pressed against my chest, but beneath it was something stronger: clarity, focus, and an undeniable sense of purpose. David had thought he was clever, hiding assets under my name without my knowledge, but he had also left me the key to undo him. The legal leverage was mine, and I intended to use it with precision. I started with small, calculated moves. I contacted the bank under the guise of routine account verification, asking questions that would give me a clearer picture of the deposits, transfers, and ownership structure. Each answer confirmed what I already suspected. David had siphoned money into this hidden account for years, funding luxuries I had no idea existed, while maintaining the appearance of a modest lifestyle. Every dollar he had moved had left a trail, and every trail led back to him. Next, I focused on the apartment. The documents indicated he had purchased it under my name, claiming it was for joint investment purposes, but he had never informed me. The legal implications were staggering. I technically owned the property, even though he had used it as his secret retreat. I felt a rush of power I hadn't felt since discovering the betrayal. For the first time, I realized that the tables could be turned entirely in my favor. I had to be careful. David was observant, cunning, and he sensed when things were amiss. If I moved too quickly or too obviously, he would become defensive and attempt to cover his tracks further. I needed patience, the kind that felt like ice in my veins, a calm precision that could outmaneuver his deception. I began documenting everything meticulously. Emails, bank statements, purchase agreements, messages, every proof of his lies, every piece of evidence of his secret life was stored securely. I labeled them, cross-referenced dates, and double-checked my facts. This was no longer just about revenge. It was about justice, reclaiming what was legally and morally mine. Then I started planting subtle questions during our daily conversations. "Oh, that reminds me. Didn't we receive some notice about the apartment? I don't remember seeing it. Have you updated the bank details recently?" Each query was casual, non-threatening, but they forced David to account for things he thought I didn't know. I could see him squirm slightly, the first cracks forming in his carefully constructed facade. One evening, I finally called the lawyer who had handled the apartment deed. I pretended it was a routine inquiry about investment properties, careful not to reveal that I knew the full truth. The lawyer confirmed what I had suspected. Legally, the apartment was entirely in my name. I could assume full control immediately if I chose to. The knowledge hit me like a wave. David had left me the ultimate tool for empowerment, unintentional or not. I waited for the right moment. It had to be strategic, undeniable, and undeniable. There was no room for error. That weekend, David mentioned he wanted to spend time at our investment property, never realizing I already knew he meant the secret apartment. I smiled internally, masking my awareness. The time had come. We arrived at the apartment together. He was unsuspecting, confident, thinking this was still his private haven. I followed him through the door, acting casual, observing every detail he revealed, everything he considered hidden. Then I made my move. "David," I said softly, but with authority, "do you realize this apartment is legally mine?" He froze mid-step, a moment of disbelief crossing his face. "Wait, what?" "I checked with the lawyer," I continued, keeping my voice steady. "The deed was always in my name. You've been using it secretly, thinking I didn't know." The color drained from his face. His confident smile vanished, replaced by a flicker of panic. I can explain," he stammered. but I raised a hand, signaling him to pause. "I'm listening," I said calmly. "And here's the thing. I've documented everything. Every transfer, every hidden expense, every lie. You underestimated me." He shifted uncomfortably, searching my eyes for a hint of mercy. There was none, only clarity, only justice, only the knowledge that the power dynamic had shifted entirely. "I'm going to assume full control of this property," I said, "and the bank account. Everything you've tried to hide, I will manage it legally, properly, without a hint of illegality. The deception stops here." David's jaw tightened. You can't just—" "I already can," I interrupted. "You left the documents under my name. You left the evidence for me to see, and now I will act. The question isn't whether I can, it's whether you're willing to face the consequences of your actions." I could see the panic growing, the realization that he had lost control completely. All the power he had hoarded was now mine to wield responsibly. It wasn't about revenge in the traditional sense. It was about reclamation, justice, and exposure. Over the next hours, I systematically assumed control of the accounts, notifying the bank of my legal authority and updating access permissions. I drafted formal documents to assert my ownership of the apartment, leaving no room for argument. Each action was deliberate, precise, and irrevocable. By the time we left the apartment that evening, David was silent, withdrawn, the confident man I had married replaced by someone who understood the magnitude of his deception. I felt a mix of relief and satisfaction. Justice wasn't loud or theatrical. It was measured, strategic, and inevitable. That night, alone, I reflected on the entire ordeal. The betrayal had been immense, but so had the opportunity for empowerment. I had reclaimed what was mine, not through anger or impulsive action, but through strategy, patience, and an unwavering commitment to truth. The tables had turned, and I had emerged not just as a victim, but as a force to be reckoned with. And in that quiet moment, I understood something vital. True power doesn't come from hiding secrets or controlling others. It comes from knowing your own worth and never allowing deception to steal it from you. David had underestimated me, but I never underestimated myself. The stage was set, and justice, silent and precise, had been delivered. The days after I took control of the apartment and the hidden account were tense. David didn't speak much, and when he did, his words were careful, measured. He knew I had uncovered everything, and that knowledge hung between us like a storm waiting to break. I had to stay composed, not just for myself, but to ensure that every step I took was deliberate, leaving no room for error or retaliation. I decided it was time to confront him fully, not in anger, but in truth. I needed him to understand the consequences of his deception, and more importantly, for him to see the authority I now held. That evening, I invited him into the living room, documents spread neatly across the coffee table. "David, we need to discuss everything," I said calmly. "I've reviewed the finances, the apartment deed, and all the transfers. I know about the hidden bank account, the secret apartment, and every lie that went with them. It ends tonight." His face paled, the confidence he once carried evaporating under the weight of exposure. He opened his mouth, then closed it again, realizing no excuses would suffice. I could see the panic in his eyes, a stark contrast to the composed man he had pretended to be. "I'm not here to humiliate you," I continued. "I'm here to make sure the truth is clear, and that what was hidden is no longer in your control. The apartment is legally mine. The accounts are under my management. Every action you took behind my back will now be addressed responsibly and transparently. You underestimated me." He sank into the couch, his shoulders slumping. I never meant for it to go this far," he muttered, almost pleadingly. "You didn't mean to get caught," I said softly, letting the words linger. "But intention doesn't erase betrayal. You've made choices that impacted both of us, and now you must face the reality of those choices. This is your accountability moment." For hours we went through every detail. Each transaction, each document, each lie was laid bare. David tried to justify his actions, but I interrupted calmly, presenting evidence logically and legally. With each point, his defenses crumbled. The fear in his eyes was unmistakable. He realized the depth of his miscalculation, that the wife he had tried to deceive was now fully in control. I didn't need to raise my voice or threaten. The document spoke louder than words. The hidden truths he had hoped to conceal had become the very instruments of his undoing. I felt a quiet satisfaction, a steady, controlled power. Justice doesn't always roar. It often whispers in the moments when deception is laid bare. Once the confrontation was complete, I took steps to secure the property fully. I changed the locks, updated access, and ensured the apartment and accounts were completely under my name. I even set up alerts for any suspicious activity, making sure that any attempt to regain control would be met with immediate awareness. David could only watch, powerless, as I exercised my rightful authority. In the days that followed, I reflected on the psychological impact of the situation. David had spent years believing he could manipulate the circumstances without consequence. Now he faced the reality of his actions. The betrayal that had been meant to secure his advantage had instead exposed him completely. There was no anger in me anymore, only a measured clarity and an understanding of the justice I had enacted. I also realized something important about myself. This experience had forced me to confront my own assumptions, my trust, and my boundaries. I had discovered a strength I hadn't fully acknowledged, the ability to remain calm under pressure, to strategize, and to reclaim control without losing my moral compass. Empowerment wasn't about retaliation. It was about reclaiming what is rightfully yours and ensuring fairness prevails. Then came the final verification with the bank and legal counsel. Every transaction, every document, every account transfer was confirmed, leaving no room for ambiguity. I had not only secured my assets, but I had also created a record that would prevent any future attempts at deception. David watched quietly, knowing that any further action on his part would be futile. And yet, the most profound moment wasn't legal or financial. It was the shift in our relationship dynamic, the unspoken acknowledgement that trust cannot be manipulated without consequence. I had reclaimed my power, my voice, and my security. The apartment and accounts were tangible symbols of that reclamation, but the true victory was intangible. The confidence and clarity I now carried. I understood fully that life would continue, but now on terms I determined. David had hidden secrets, but I had uncovered them and acted decisively. There would be no repeat of deception, no illusions of control left unchallenged. The house, the accounts, and my sense of security were no longer negotiable. That night, as I walked through the apartment, I paused and let myself breathe. The betrayal had been deep, painful, and personal. But I had responded with intelligence, patience, and precision. David had underestimated me, as most people do when they believe trust can be exploited. But trust, when combined with awareness and action, becomes a formidable force. I realized then that empowerment often comes disguised as adversity. The hidden apartment and secret accounts were symbols of deception, yes, but they also became the instruments through which I reclaimed authority. Every calculated step, every quiet strategy, every moment of patience had led to this resolution. And in that quiet, reflective moment, I knew something essential. True justice doesn't always need drama or confrontation. Sometimes it is quiet, deliberate, and absolute. David had tried to control the narrative, but I had rewritten it. Every lie had been met with transparency, every secret countered with knowledge, and every attempt at deception neutralized by awareness. By the time I left the apartment that evening, I felt a sense of closure. The battle had been fought not with anger, but with intelligence and resolve. I had reclaimed not only my property and accounts, but also my dignity and peace of mind. David had learned in the most undeniable way that betrayal carries consequences, and that those consequences are often determined by the very person they thought powerless. The days after reclaiming control felt surreal. The apartment was fully mine, the hidden bank account now secure, and every document validated. David no longer attempted excuses or justifications. He had learned the hard way that deception carries consequences. But more than the legal and financial victories, there was something deeper. I had regained my power, my voice, and my confidence. I spent hours reflecting on everything. How had I missed the signs? How could someone I trusted so completely orchestrate such a betrayal? The answers were simple yet painful. Trust without verification, assumptions instead of awareness, and the comfort of routine had blinded me. But now, I had transformed that vulnerability into strength. The next step was to ensure this situation could never happen again. I met with the lawyer to formalize all transfers, accounts, and property documentation. Every document was double-checked, notarized, and filed securely. I wanted no chance of ambiguity, no loopholes for deceit. David had underestimated me, and I would never allow that to happen again. When I informed him of the finalizations, there was no argument. He sat silently, processing the reality that the life he had manipulated was now entirely beyond his control. I felt no anger toward him, only clarity. Betrayal had been met with justice, and empowerment had replaced fear. In the weeks that followed, I organized the apartment and accounts according to my vision. I opened the property for legitimate rental opportunities, managed the funds transparently, and regained a sense of financial independence I had never fully appreciated. The hidden world David had tried to keep from me became a foundation for my own stability. I also reflected on the psychological impact. David's deception had tested me in ways I never anticipated. I had learned patience, precision, and the value of vigilance. I had learned that trust must be paired with awareness, and that empowerment often comes disguised as adversity. His betrayal became my opportunity for growth, resilience, and authority. Eventually, David approached me, cautiously. "I see now. I never realized how serious this would be," he admitted. There was humility in his voice, an acknowledgement of his errors. I didn't respond with anger or sarcasm. I let him feel the weight of his choices, silently witnessing the lesson he had earned. The most profound moment wasn't the property, the money, or the documents. It was the shift within me. I had discovered an inner strength I hadn't known existed, the ability to act decisively, strategically, and without losing integrity. That strength was now mine to carry into every aspect of my life. Looking back, I realized the irony. David had hidden the apartment and bank account, thinking he could control the narrative. But in doing so, he provided me the tools to reclaim everything. The betrayal that had threatened to break me became the instrument of my empowerment. Every secret he had hoped to conceal turned into proof of my resilience and capacity for action. I also recognized the importance of foresight. Life will always present moments of deception, challenges, and hidden threats. But it's how we respond, calmly, strategically, and with unwavering clarity, that defines the outcome. I had reclaimed my life, my dignity, and my sense of security not through vengeance, but through intelligence and preparation. And now, as I walk through the apartment I legally own, manage the accounts in my control, and reflect on the lessons learned, I feel a quiet sense of triumph. Not arrogance, not vindictiveness, but a deep understanding that betrayal can be met with justice if we are observant, patient, and deliberate. To anyone watching this story, remember, trust wisely, verify often, and never underestimate your own power. Life may hand you betrayal, but it also provides the tools to reclaim your life and assert your authority. If you've ever been deceived by someone close, don't despair. Use what you have, the knowledge, the documents, the legal means, the clarity of mind, to assert your rights and reclaim what's yours. The true measure of empowerment is not revenge, it's justice, strategy, and composure. Thank you for following my story. If you found this tale of deception, discovery, and empowerment compelling, subscribe to Revenge Reels. We bring real stories of betrayal, justice, and poetic consequences every week. And remember, the next story is already waiting. A brother's greed threatens a family estate, but the one he betrayed has a secret that will change everything. Don't miss it.